So you might know Cecil if you've turned to the on.net program there on Channel 9. Cecil Phillip, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, no problem, Jeff. How you doing?
Oh man, it's a long day, but this is so much fun learning all this and talking to the folks in the chat room and going over all these different software architecture topics. It's been a thrill. So, why don't you give the quick introduction about yourself so that folks know who you are?
Sure, no problem. So my name is Cecil Phillip. I'm a cloud developer advocate here at Microsoft. So essentially, what that means is that I go around and I do a lot of talks and demos and workshops and things of that nature. And we really try to make sure that developers have a really good experience building applications in the cloud. So me particularly, I'm focused a lot on students. I'm focused a lot on the .NET experience, specifically in Azure.
Okay.
So those are the types of events and the types of folks that you usually see me talking to.
So, and you talked to them about all kinds of .NET stuff, and what we wanted to talk about today was serverless computing. We've done a lot of work throughout the day talking
Yes.
about back-end services and domain-driven design and good architecture, but what if we throw the server out the window and we just went serverless? What does that mean, serverless?
Right. So that's a good place to start, right? Like, what does this serverless mean? Like, where did my servers go, kind of thing. And so the way I kind of like to frame serverless is kind of like, imagine that you had the ability to use compute power, but you didn't have to wonder about, where the servers are, who's doing the backups,
Yes.
not so much so about the operating
Oh
system
my
and,
gosh, patching on Patch Tuesdays, right?
yeah, exactly. Imagine if, let's say I was an insurance company, right, or a HR company, and I could just focus on, solving business problems. Like I could just worry about writing the code to solve my problem, but not so much sure about, what servers are going to go on, or what version of .NET is on that machine, and like all these other types of deployment and maintenance problems that we usually have. So again, what we get from serverless again is we have this abstraction where we can get like this raw compute, some raw services, and then our development teams, our ops teams, they could just really focus on, again, providing business value versus, again, becoming like technical deployment experts, right? When, you really want to just be creating features for your application.
Yeah, absolutely. I like being the ideas of being able to as a specialist, right, in a specific business area, be able to focus on just that thing, and all that ceremony just goes away.
Right. Another way I like to talk to people about it is, so imagine, if you take your wireless router, for instance, as an
Sure.
example.
Okay.
So your wireless router has wires, right?
It does.
Like it's plugged into something,
Yeah.
right? Like the signal is coming from somewhere, but you as a consumer of that service, like you're not really so much so concerned about that, right? Like
Mm.
you're just concerned about, hey, I have my tablet, my phone, my laptop, my smart devices around the home or whatever the case is. And you know what? When I hit that little Wi-Fi signal, it just turns on and it connects, right? And it works.
Yeah.
But then you're not running cable all over your house and stuff like that for to make that happen. So again, serverless is the
Well,
same way, right? Servers are
well,
there, the compute is there, but then I'm not so much so concerned about, well, okay, well, this is the compute and this is the machine and some of those types of things.
okay. Confession. I ran
Confession.
cable through my house because I wanted to get a wired connection on the other side of the house
Oh, dude. So
for my kids.
I got to tell you. So this is what I did just to last week, actually.
Okay.
So have you ever heard about Powerline?
Powerline, yes, but why don't you go ahead and describe it for the folks in the chat room?
So essentially, Powerline. I wish I had the box to show everybody. But essentially, Powerline is a way that I could have, I can extend my network through the electricity, through the electrical wiring of my house, instead of me having to like run cable. So essentially, what I did, I went, to an online store. I bought a kit. So now what I do now is I have one unit that's plugged into the router, right? It's plugged into the router through the Ethernet cable, but then obviously it's plugged into the socket,
Mm,
like the
yeah,
wall
yeah.
socket. And then now I have another unit that's inside of my office. You can't see, but it's like down here on the floor.
Okay.
It's plugged into the socket, and now I have another Ethernet cable running from that into my machine. And then I did some tests on it. I'm actually getting pretty much the same throughput, right? I have a cable modem, so I'm doing something close to 200 megabits per second.
Whoa.
It's been fairly consistent for me so far. So far so good, man.
Oh yeah. And other than the camera looks like it's a little bit stuttery, but otherwise the audio has been
Is
great.
it?
Yeah.
Should I change the camera?
No, no, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
So, all right.
So what do we do this? So we talked about what serverless was, right?
Yeah,
What do
yeah.
we kind of talk about like some of the use cases of serverless, and then maybe we could kind of get into some demos. Does that sound like a good
Oh,
idea?
that makes perfect sense here. All right.
Right. So again,
So
like
let's go over to code, and then let's see where we go from here.
sure.
So I will fade over there. Look at that. Pro streamer, that's what I am.
Nice.
All right, so I'm here in an empty Visual Studio. Do I start in Visual Studio, or where do I start to get involved with serverless?
So here's the thing with serverless, right? Like, you can start on a lot of different places.
Mm,
So for instance, if you're a Visual Studio person, obviously you could start in Visual Studio. If you like Visual Studio Code, there's obviously tooling that for there as well.
okay.
But you can actually get started inside of the browser. And so why don't we do that first and kind of show people how that actually works?
Oh,
So
do
do you
tell.
mind going over into your browser and going over to the Azure portal?
Let's go to portalazure.com, my favorite portal. I'm going to sign on with my personal account,
Okay.
and I'm going to sign on a second time with my personal account. There we go. All right, so these are all my stream resources that I use here on one Azure dashboard. All right, I should share over to you. Let's do this. I'll share my screen so you can see what I've got happening.
Okay.
And I will also make sure that I'm sharing sound. There we go. All right, so here I am. I'm on my resources board here. So do I just start saying create serverless? What do I create?
All right, so this is what I want you to do. So you see that little green plus sign on the left-hand side? I want you to
Yes.
click on that. So that's your new resources, right?
Okay.
And I want you to type function app. Right, so we're going to create a new Azure function.
Oh, look, it popped up right
Um,
there.
so we actually haven't said what a function app is, right? So
Okay.
in Azure, like the way that we service serverless compute, right? Like our serverless computing power is through creating functions, right? So we have a service called Azure Functions that
Okay.
lets us create like these serverless again functions in the cloud and allows us to run them. So what we're doing now is we're going to go into Azure. We're going to create a new function app, right? So go ahead and hit that create button really quick.
All right. I will create. All right, so this starts to look like my normal app service setup when I'm setting up a web app. I get a similar panel here.
You do, and an important thing to kind of know about that is so Azure Functions is actually running on the same type of infrastructure that Azure App Services. So again, Azure App Service again is the place that we usually build and deploy our web apps to in Azure. So again, it's a very similar experience in terms of creating it because again, it's kind of running on some of that familiar infrastructure.
Okay, so I can
So
just
so
give
go ahead and
this.
just give it a name,
All
whatever you
right.
want to call it.
So let's call this Fritz and Friends. So it kind of fits in with the rest of what we're doing. Good, that name's available.
Sure, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it at consumption plan. Actually, we can leave everything else as it is, and we can go ahead and hit create. Like all those defaults are perfectly fine.
Cool. Alrighty, and it's
So now what it's going to
valid.
do is going to go off in the back end and it's going to provision this resource for you. Um, it's going to create like the function app. It's going to create your resource group. And then another thing that you're going to get is actually an Azure storage account.
Okay.
So you use an Azure storage account to store some of the telemetry and some other information that we're going to take a look at.
Deployment in progress. All right, we will wait, and we'll
Yeah, so this
close.
actually goes pretty quickly. So we shouldn't be waiting too long for that to finish.
And our friend Glenn Condren in the chat room is saying snarky comment about Fritz not having any friends is just too tempting.
Jeff, I could be your friend, man. Don't worry about
But
it.
thank you. This is only fair since I was on.net a few weeks ago, right?
Exactly.
This is payback.
Right.
Alrighty. It
Did you
should.
clear your notifications?
I did clear it. I'm waiting for it to appear. I see Fritz and Friends application insights. I don't.
Go to
I
the
see a.
resource group.
Yeah, let's go to the resource group.
Okay.
There we
All right,
go.
so there it is, right? So that thing with the yellow lightning bolt, like so that's your function app. So
All
click
right.
on that really quickly.
Okay. Now I have the Azure Mask turned on so that it hides some of my IDs from being
Sure.
sent out there. Oh, Ellie face, it's not Fritz and friend. No, they're being brutal. All right.
Um, so again, so this is the default space that you get when you create an empty function app. Now, let's talk about the function app a little bit.
Okay.
Now, a function app, you can think about that as a single unit of kind of deployment, right? So, my function app can have multiple functions inside of there, right? So what we're going to do now, we're going to kind of come in here. We're going to create our first Azure function.
All right.
So head over to where it says Fritz and Friends with that little bolt.
Yeah.
And then down underneath, you should see that function section. Hit
Sure
the
do.
plus sign.
Hit the plus. Okay.
So this is like the wizard that you get, right? When, the first time that you create a function. So now, when we talk about functions and running in a serverless way, essentially what happens is that we need to figure out, well, what's actually going to run our function? Like, what's going to be the trigger to say, hey, it's time for our code to start running, right? So when we talk about Azure Functions, there's a lot of different types of triggers that are available out of the box. So I could decide I want to start a trigger based on you added something to blob storage, or maybe you created a queue and you created a new message on the queue, or maybe you want to respond to an HTTP message or something of that sort, right? So
Sure.
all of these different types of events will trigger your function and say, hey, it's time for me to start running my code.
Makes sense. Okay. So this one I'm guessing is more like an RPC, a remote procedure call, a typical web API endpoint that I might have created in ASP.NET.
Yeah, definitely.
A timer on a set interval, it'll start up almost like a cron job.
Yep.
And then is data processing what you were saying about some sort of a trigger, right? A entry in a blob or
Sure.
someplace. Okay.
Yeah, sure. As data changes, like how do I react to that, right? Like,
Okay.
event fires off, and now I want to start doing some processing.
Cool.
Also notice like right underneath there, so you could choose your languages. And Azure Functions today supports a lot of different languages. There's C#, JavaScript, F#, and Java, as you see at the bottom. Those are the officially supported languages, meaning that you'll get commercial support for them. You can call somebody in the phone and say, hey, I'm having a problem, and they'll kind of help work you through some of those things.
But you said
But there's
official.
also languages that are available that are experimental, meaning that we're working on them and they're kind of here, but they're not fully production ready yet. So you could write some stuff with them, but again, like you can't call anybody and get support for that type of stuff.
So I want to create functions in Go or Dart or right something that's a little bit off the
Different.
beaten path
Sure.
from Azure.
Sure.
Okay. Python, right?
Right, Python or something like that.
Cool.
Now, what I want to have you do, so right under choose language, there's a link that says create your own custom function.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
no, no, okay, so click on that.
All right.
So what this is doing is this is showing you all of the various templates that are available, right? So
Ah,
in that quick start page that we were at just now, we only saw like 3 of them.
yeah, yeah.
Well, here's all of them, right? And then notice at the top you could filter by language and so on and so forth, right?
Awesome. Okay.
Now, I want you to go and hit that on the right side. I want you to hit that experimental language support
The
thing.
switch. Yeah, yeah.
Yep, switch.
Oh my
And
gosh. Yeah,
right,
look
and
at
so
all
now
these
you
new
can
ones.
see all of these different languages that are supported. Again, some of them are experimental and some of them are fully supported. But again, you could see like some of the support for like these different runtimes of what the Azure Functions already has for you.
Very cool. All right. But I'm a C# guy. I am C# Fritz. I'm going to create a C# function. Is that cool?
Yeah, let's do that. So let's start with this. Let's create an HTTP triggered function. This is actually probably like the most common triggers used,
Okay.
right? So an HTTP trigger function is going to be, I'm going to send an HTTP request to some endpoint, and then it's going to kick off my code and it's going to start running for me.
Okay. So I clicked on trigger, and then I get to choose a language. I want C#.
Sure.
And
Then you give it a name.
all right, I'll give it a name. And can I just call this like my first function?
Sure, let's call it that.
Okay. Now, what's authorization level?
Sure. So the authorization level, so whenever you create a new HTTP triggered function specifically, you have the ability to assign function keys to it. So you can think about function keys like they're API keys.
Oh,
Right? Like,
okay.
so there's some, if you have this key, I'm going to allow you to call my function type deal. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So if you click on the drop down, you should see that there's a function level, there's anonymous, and there's also admin. Right. So obviously, anonymous is saying, well, you don't have any keys, and anybody could call this function. Right? The function level is going to define a key that's going to be used on a per function basis, right?
Okay.
And then the admin is saying all of my functions in that function app, you're going to be able to use this key. So again, remember we talked about a function app being a collection of multiple functions, one or more functions.
Right.
So if I wanted to have a single key that all of those would use or respect, I could create an admin key, right?
Okay.
So I think for the sake of this, do you want to go ahead and do anonymous or?
Yeah, let's do anonymous.
Just for the sake of simplicity today.
All right, and then
go ahead and create. And what should happen in just like a few more seconds or so, inside of your browser, you should see like the editor should pop up, and you should see some code that just got automatically scaffolded out for you.
Yeah, HTTP trigger function processed a request is being logged. Get name value pairs, and it's looking for name. Please pass a name on the query string. If it doesn't have a name, otherwise it's effectively a hello world, it looks like.
Pretty much. So what you're seeing here is like the in-browser editing experience for Azure Functions. Right?
Okay.
So what we're doing here is, again, we're getting in some HTTP request message. And again, this is the regular HTTP request message. If you're familiar with working with ASP.NET Web API or HTTP client, these are the same objects that we're working with. So there's not a different API surface really that you're working with. So it's a very familiar place for you. And then as you can see, all it's doing is it's just checking for a name parameter, and then it's returning that in response. And then if it doesn't have it, it's saying, hey, well, you need to give it to me, and then it returns a bad request if we don't have it.
Makes sense. And I like that we're using those status codes appropriately so that we're not just telling a human what this is, but we're triggering a machine with appropriate machine notification and status codes that it knows how to parse.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Cool.
So what you can do here, again, like this is not just static code, right? Like obviously this is an editor. You can kind of come in here and you could change the code. You could write more code. You could create more functions like this. But again, this is very much of just like in-browser type experience. So there you go. If you want to change that.
No, wait, I wasn't up there. I clicked. I want to be down here, and if I want to change this to say I'm not getting it's not letting me type here. Let me refresh.
Okay, sure. You should change the message from hello to Fritch has friends.
There you go. That's a great idea. Look at that. See that Ellie face? We're gonna change that. Right, so there's my first function. And we'll let the editor load. Fritz has friends.
There you go.
Like, and then we'll add your name.
Sure. And then go ahead and hit that save button.
All right.
So there's a couple of ways that we can kind of run this or kind of test this in the browser. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to head over to that right panel in your browser.
Yeah.
And you should see a thing called test.
Yeah.
Right. So if you click on that, what you have now is kind of like an in-browser request mocking tool of some sort, right?
Yeah.
So notice I could set the HTTP method that I use. Notice I'm specifying the body, and I can do some of these types of things just to kind of mock this out and see, well, hey, is my function actually going to be running, right?
Okay, makes sense.
So that's the testing section. I want you, if you go back into the middle part, right? So and then scroll down a little bit. No, so not on the right side, in the middle.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, there it is.
And then you should see something that says logs.
Yep, there we go. So I'll open that.
If you take that up, right? So now notice like we have some logging statements inside of the function that got scaffolded out for us.
Yeah.
So as we test this out, so if you hit that run button on the right side, right, you should see if your function executes in the right way. You should see like your logs are starting to come out now.
Yep.
So we have a very interesting experience where you can kind of test these things out in the browser, and also you can get some telemetry and some logging in a very basic level, just to be like, okay, hey, well, my function is responding to these requests, if that makes sense.
Cool. All right. So, right, we're just gonna. It doesn't matter what's in here. It will run, and I get the format back that I kind of expected. So.
There you go.
Cool, and it's showing status okay. Now, if I didn't have a name there, if that was empty, I should see that. Now it didn't. Its name is null, so maybe we need to make that.
So if you just remove the parameter at all, so if you kind of come in and just delete the parameter,
Just yank the whole
or
thing.
just, yeah, or something like that.
There you go. Now I get the 400 bad request. So I'm
Yeah,
properly signaling so that a machine on the other side knows how to handle that response code appropriately.
right. So now what we've done is we just created like your first Azure function. And again, you notice that you never had to say like how big this machine needs to be or how much RAM do I need to
No.
use or anything like that, right?
No, and right, I know some folks who are using cloud providers. They get paranoid around. Oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost me? How big do I need to make this? This
And
is
so
something.
let's no, I'm sorry. Let's talk about those two parts, right? So the
Sure.
first one you said, well, how much is this going to cost me?
Yeah.
So Azure Functions today, you get 1 million requests per month free. 1 million executions per month free. Right? So
Hang on.
let's
Hang
just
on.
think about that
A million requests free.
for free. Right?
Okay.
So that means that again, I could just start kicking off these various methods.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you have a very large company and a very large, establishment, you know what I mean? You're probably gonna hit that million, probably
You're
before
gonna
the
hit
end
it
of the month.
faster. Sure.
You're gonna hit it
Okay.
faster, right? But again, for small and medium-sized businesses, it's a very good, it's a very easy way for you to kind of start getting into serverless, and it makes it very accessible for you.
Now,
So that's one thing to know about.
and Glenn
Um,
points out that they can do 1 million requests a second with ASP.NET Core now. So that million can go away in a second.
and your million per second could go away in a second, so that's totally true. Right?
That
That's
could
that's that's
be
definitely true.
if that's how you use it.
Exactly, exactly. Um, and obviously, when we talk about it being a million executions per month free, obviously, like if you're connecting to other services and things of that nature, you'd still have to obviously pay for those.
Sure.
But in terms of like this, the actual execution, the actual running of your function, and the time that it takes to run and the memory it's using, like again, you can get 1 million executions free per month, which I think is again, this makes it really easy for us to kind of get started in trying this stuff out.
Absolutely. And Ashner in the chat room, I think, put it very well. It's basically free to learn Azure Functions.
Pretty much, right? Because as you saw, right, like if you look inside of your function, there's nothing really different from the programming models that we've been used to so far,
Yeah.
right? Again, like HTTP responsiveness is a very familiar pattern if you've been working with web APIs and ASP.NET in the past, right? And then there's using dynamic, and we're using async await, and we're returning proper status codes and things of that nature, right? Like there's nothing so far that we've seen that looks foreign to us.
No. This looks directly like um, a simple one method interaction
Yeah,
with a HTTP request. Okay.
exactly. Now, the other thing I want to talk about a little bit, well, how does this scale, right? Because
Yeah.
again, we never asked or spoke about the machine, right?
Right.
Like, what is this thing running on, and how does this actually scale from it?
Yeah.
So,
The
I,
operations side on some folks must flip out when they see this. Like, how many servers? How do we load balance? How do we? Oh my gosh.
yeah, like, what is going on here? Like, I don't know, like, where's the black magic happening, right?
Yes, I need RAM. I need processor. What are those things?
Right. And so this is again kind of like the whole point of serverless, right? In the back end, what's going to happen is, as your requests kind of start to throttle up, if you have, I don't know, I like to use the example of Christmas shopping, right? Like we know when
Mm.
Christmas shopping happens, tons of people are going to hit your store and they're going to be querying your inventory and adding things to your shopping cart, and there's different operations that are probably going to get hit really hard.
Oh yeah.
And in the past, what we had to do, right, was I had to get another server and I got to put it in the rack and I got to install stuff, right? I got to
Server's
Windows
not going to be
updates and
here. The server doesn't get delivered till the weekend. So you know what? Saturday overnight at 3 a.m. You're going to need to be down at the colo doing the install. Ugh.
exactly all these things had to happen. And so now you're up and you're set up and you've paid for this additional hardware and infrastructure and spent the time to configure it the right way. And then Christmas is over,
What do you do?
and sure you've been able to handle that traffic, but guess what, like you've paid for this machine that you're not even utilizing to its full extent anymore because it's February, it's March, and like those busy seasons have kind of gone away,
Mm.
right? So the great thing about serverless, again, in the background, what Azure Functions and what the runtime will do for you is it'll say, oh wow, like this endpoint or this function is really getting hammered. This function app is really getting hammered. Let's start to scale up, right? And let's start to provision more pieces in the back that we can kind of
Ah,
load balance those requests for you. Right? And
okay.
so that's again, that's essentially what happens for you in the background, right? One of the differences you'll see, so if you ever worked with Azure App Service,
Yeah,
right?
oh
Like when
yeah.
we talk about scaling app service, there's a configuration option that you have to go set and say, this is how I want my app to scale, right? Like this is the percentage or this is the limitations
When I
that when
hit,
it hits this threshold,
yeah,
I want you to spin up more machines for me, right?
gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
With serverless, you don't do that, right? It just does it, right? It happens for you, and then now again, you don't have to worry about, hey, I just paid for 3 or 4 instances, right? Like you're gonna only pay for what you use, and if you don't use it, you don't pay for it.
Very cool. All
Okay.
right.
So so what we've seen so far, we've seen how we can create a function inside of the browser, right?
Right.
But again, for most of us that are been programmed for a significant amount of time, like we're used to our tools, right? Visual Studio Code, and IntelliJ, and you know
Oh yeah.
debugging, and you know like a lot of these types of things that we're just used to using, right, as a part of our regular development workflow, right?
Absolutely.
Like I can't imagine a lot of folks could be creating 30, 40, 50 functions and doing it all in the browser, and not being able to like kind of debug it in the rich way that we've been doing for so many
And
years.
and that's where I wanted to ask because I saw somebody in the chat room saying, aspiring DevOps guru, that's who said it. If you're trying to debug these functions, oh my gosh, you're going to blow through that million requests really quick. But if I could do it in
Yes,
Visual Studio,
right.
that's a little bit better.
That's a little bit different now, right? So
Oh
so
yeah.
let's head over to Visual Studio really quick.
Okay. So I'm going to minimize my browser. I have Visual Studio here.
So so let's see what it's like to create a serverless function inside of Visual Studio,
Okay.
right? So let's go ahead and do a file new project.
Yep. And then we'll get the live share running here so we can communicate with each other.
Sure, sure, sure. We'll do that in a minute. And
Uh,
then you should have under Visual C Sharp, because we're going to write this in C Sharp.
yep.
So we should see, no,
Oh.
so go back. You should see Azure Functions.
Yep. There it is.
You can click on that. And now you can just give it a function name, whatever you feel like calling it and wherever you want to put it.
All right, let's call this. Let's just call this architecture workshop.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, this looks
And
just
so
like what
here's,
I saw on that other screen in the web browser.
right. So here's a bunch of different templates and that are available for us to kind of start using. For this one, I want us to create a timer trigger. So could you scroll and see where the timer trigger is? So we can,
Sure, sure, sure. Oh, there we go. Timer.
okay. All right. So before you do anything, right? So I want everybody to see here on the right side. So notice there's the storage emulator,
Yep.
right? So again, remember before I was saying that Azure Functions, you
Uh,
kind of are required to have a Azure storage account
mm-hmm,
for
mm-hmm.
some of the backend things that it needs to do. So here, since we're going to be kind of doing this locally, it's going to be using the local storage emulator, right? So you'd have to have like the storage emulator installed, for instance, to make sure that this thing runs, fine.
I don't think I have it installed.
You don't? You don't have the local storage emulator?
Don't think I. Oh no!
There it is, storage emulator.
Look at
Yep.
that.
And then it'll start up, and it'll just be ready to go.
It's doing
Now,
its
if you
thing.
didn't do this manually, just for the sake of folks listening, if Jeff didn't come in and do this manually, whenever you started debugging in Visual Studio, it would just start it for you, right? So you don't have to worry about, okay, I have to have it set up and ready to go.
Okay. There's a quick question here in the chat room. That million function executions, that's per account, not per function. Right? So if I have 10 different functions, I don't get 10 million free requests. It's
No, no,
1
no,
mil.
it's not per function at all. No,
Right.
not.
It's per subscription.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, 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 yes. That is important to know. It is
Okay.
definitely not per individual function at all.
There we go. So just to clear that up for the folks in the chat room. Okay, so I have a timer trigger, and this looks like cron syntax here. I'm not too good with cron syntax.
It is cron syntax, but you know what? I'll help you work through it, and we actually have some documentation that will help us with that as well. So actually, go ahead and hit OK.
Okay.
And then while that's scaffolding itself out, oh, that was pretty quick. Wow.
All right, I will do the share so we can get you jumped on board here with the live share. There we go.
Sure, let's do that.
And I should be able to paste a link. I think that'll get you into my session.
All right, I just got it. I'm clicking on it right now. Visual Studio is about to open up.
Oh, look at that. And Shane's got the link for crontab.guru for us. Thank you. Oh, and Ashley has it as well. Look at that. Back to back.
That's pair programming, man. I love that.
That is. Mob programming here. Look at that. We got 131 folks with us right now. Thank you so much, everybody, tuning in and hanging out all day today. This has been great.
All right, so mine is still connecting to your session.
Let me make sure.
So Visual Studio opened up, but it did not launch the session, but it did open it. So let's try this again. Let me try this on my side and see if it does anything different.
Yeah, I like to go to File and then Join Collaboration Session.
Oh, is that easier? Okay.
Yeah. That way it doesn't open another one.
This is another window. Okay. File, Join Collaboration. See that.
And then paste the link into there and you'll be on.
Paste the link in. Connecting to remote session, and I'm guessing this should be done in like a fairly quick amount of time.
Oh, yeah. Especially since we're both on the East Coast.
Yeah.
There we go. Cecil has joined your collaboration session. Fantastic.
Great, it's opening up, and
there we go. So we can see your initials up here next to the sharing. So that's
great.
That's great. All right.
All right, so let's kind of break down the anatomy of this a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, there's two things that everyone might notice that are a little bit different from the function that we saw inside of the browser, right? In this particular function, we have some attributes here that we didn't see before, right? So now notice that we have a function name app, right? So I could come in here, and if we wanted to change the name of the function, I could use this attribute to do that, right? So I could just say, I don't know, just, timer, right? Whatever you want to call that.
Sure.
Or something like that. So now this is defining the name of the function.
Okay.
And then notice our trigger also has an attribute, right? And so we have a timer trigger attribute, and inside of the constructor, so to speak, of the actual timer, like I could specify the cron notation to determine how this is actually running. Now, by default, when we just created it, it's actually going to run this function every 5 minutes, right? So that's what this // does. Right?
Okay.
So I guess to give people some context, so the first one is seconds, second one is minutes, then we go to hours and dates and months and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So the second one represents the minutes. So the / means I'm going to do it on a like a per instance kind of thing. So like every 5 minutes, I want you to run this function, right? So that's what's set up to happen right now.
Okay.
Now I want to change this because I don't think we want to wait 5 minutes. That's a little bit of a while.
No.
I want to change this to every 15 seconds, right? Or maybe even every 10 seconds. Maybe 15 is too long.
Yeah, it's good.
So every 10 seconds, I want this function to trigger and run, right? All right, so we have the function name. We have the attribute, right? So again, the attribute is going to let us know what type of trigger it is. We're using a timer trigger, and we're saying we want this to run every 10 seconds. Now, let's actually have it do something, right?
Okay.
So now I'm in Visual Studio, right? So I could start to, use some of the familiar things I'm used to in Visual Studio.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm gonna create a, I want to create an HTTP client, right? I'm going to say new HTTP client, right? Again, I'm in Visual Studio, right? So I could do control dot and I could start bringing in namespaces and again, all the familiar tooling that I'm used to.
Yeah.
And now what I want to do is I actually want to make a request. And I think I want to make a request to that function that we created in the cloud. So if everyone remembers, like the first function we created was one that says, Fritz has friends and, you could pass a name parameter to it.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is, let's do this. Actually, go back in your browser.
Sure. There we go.
So this is an HTTP triggered function, right?
Right.
If you look at the top of it, like close to where the save and the run button are,
yeah,
there's a link that says get function URL.
Right.
So this is the location right? Or this is the address that I could use to send requests to my function,
Okay.
right? In real life, like I'm not going to use that test thing that's on the right side. I'm actually going to make a HTTP request from my mobile browser or my phone or my app or whatever the case is, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
click on that link really quickly.
There's my
You can put
URL.
that in the clipboard. Right. Great. Now let's go back over to Visual Studio. So what I
Alrighty.
want to do is I want to make a request to that function app. So what I need to do is I need to do something like client dot, and I want to say something like get as string async, I believe.
Yep.
Right. I don't know if the IntelliSense is showing on your end, but it doesn't really show on mine. But what you can do now is I want you to paste in there that that URL we just
That
put in.
URL.
Great.
It's not pasting from my side.
Not pasting? No?
Let me try copying it again. This. It says it copied. No.
No?
All right.
Do we have to save it maybe? Is this a live share thing?
I
Have to save it and close the window?
don't know. Copy. Are you kidding?
No.
I
See
can't.
if you could paste it into Notepad or something, like another editor. That works.
Yep, there it is.
Okay. Why don't we close this window and reopen it and see if that makes a difference? Like close the C# file.
All right, and reopen. No, it's not letting me paste.
No?
That's definitely a live share thing. Let me do this. I'm going to close that window, and I'm going to right-click and say Open With, and I'm going to force it to go to Notepad, so that I can pop it right in there. And there it is.
All right, great. It's in there. So now, we're calling this get a string async function, right? So that means that this is probably returning like some type of async operation, right? So what I want to do, I'm going to probably do something like await. And now that means that I'm going to have to make this async, right? So again, like we're using a lot of those familiar idioms that we're used to. We could use async await, and we could use task TPL, and like a lot of these other things that we're just used to.
Sure.
Now this is saying it can't find the method. Let's see. I'm pretty sure that's the name of the method, get a string async. Am I mistaken? Get
stream async.
No, I want the string, not stream. So there's stream and there's string.
Right. So if you get rid of the word as.
Oh, there's no as. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Great. All right. So now what we're doing inside of this method is that I'm expecting every 5 minutes, it's going to make a request to this function, and it's going to give me that response back. And if you remember, that response was that string message, right, that we were returning before.
Right, but we need to pass that payload.
We do. So let's do this. I'm going to put responses equal to, right? And then let's do this. I'm going to use the logger that we already have. I'm going to say log.info, or I think it's log.info. And then I'm just going to pass the response.
Okay? Cool. All right.
Great. So let's just run this for now. We're going to talk about the payload because there's a reason I'm not putting it in yet.
Okay.
But let's just run this for now and see again like what this experience is like, right?
Sure.
So for everyone that's listening, again, the context is I have a function that's running in the cloud, and I have one that's running on my local machine. And essentially, I'm going to have them talk to each other, right? So let's see how that works.
All right. So I'll just run it from
here. Go ahead and debug it. Yep.
All right.
Now, again, when you run Azure Functions in the cloud, when you create your function in the cloud, obviously it's running on the Azure Function runtime that's over there. Now that we're running on our machine, we're actually still running on the same Azure Functions runtime. So what you're seeing in this terminal window now is that it's just booting the runtime for you, like loading all the extensions and the filters and like all the configuration essentially that was needed to kind of make that happen, right?
So look at that. So, response does not indicate success.
Response does not indicate success, right? And notice, like again, every 10 seconds or so, it's kicking off, right? And then we're getting these errors back. So again, like these are the kind of things that we're used to, right? Like when we're working with Visual Studio on local machines, like I want to see my stack trace, I want to see these errors, I want to be able to get some diagnostic information about what exactly is happening in my function. Now, so you can stop this now, and again, it's just going to keep firing every 10 seconds. So again, because we knew that, oh, we're supposed to pass this parameter, so let's go ahead and add that to the function.
And
So what I
was
could
it
do,
actually running that locally, or did it send it to the cloud to run that? It was running locally.
well, it was running on both, right? So it's running the timer trigger locally because we created it
Yes.
locally.
Okay. Yeah, the one that we're
And then it was sending the request to our HTTP triggered function that's running in the cloud.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead here and I'm going to edit this really quick and put in this name parameter. And let's just say, I'll just say Jeff, sure. That's kind of weird. Jeff has friends called Jeff. That's a little strange. Let's just say Cecil, because
Sure.
I want to be your friend, Jeff.
Oh, thank you.
So now, again, like the same thing is going to happen, right? Like if you go ahead and run this really quick,
Yep.
again, it's going to boot the Azure Function runtime. We're going to see, all those, extensions and things of that nature kind of load up. And then again, every 5 seconds now, we should be able to get a response back.
There's one.
Right. So there you go. Fritz has friends like Cecil. So we know that this thing is running. And again, every 10 seconds or whatever, because it's going to be running.
Right.
So now if we close this window, and I'm going to open the Solution Explorer. I don't know if LiveShare opens the Solution Explorer if I open it.
It does not.
Probably not. So you already have the Solution Explorer open.
Yep.
I want you to go over into dependencies.
Sure.
And so in the dependencies, and you notice like if you open NuGet, right, you notice that the Azure Functions SDK that's in there, it's just a NuGet package.
Right.
And as you're developing your own functions and things of that nature, you can bring in your own NuGet packages as well for the most part, and you'll be able to leverage that functionality or any libraries that you might have created yourself, and then just kind of bring them in really easily. Because again, at the end of the day, it's a CS proj file with MS Build like generating DLLs that's running in the cloud.
Awesome. Okay. So, and we're actually out of time. We're at the.
Or are we?
Yeah, but
we started late though.
We did start late, but we actually covered a couple of really important things here, right? We can build our functions here inside Visual Studio. Is this .NET Framework or is this .NET Core we're building with?
Sure. So that's a great question. So if folks remember, when we did that file new project experience,
yes,
one of the options that was at the top was, do you want to create it in Functions version 1 or you want to create it in Functions version 2? Now, one of the main differences between those different versions of functions is one, Azure Functions version 1 is what's
let's just try adding another one.
Ready? Sure, you can create another one.
And
you have to create another function. So right.
So there you go.
Function version 1 for version 2. So V1 is what's available in Azure today, in terms of what's supported and what's what you're going to be able to get support for, right? Like, from a QA perspective.
Sure.
Right? And that's running on .NET Framework. .NET full framework, I think it's .NET 4.7.1 or something like that, right?
Okay.
Functions version 2 is still in preview, but that was running .NET Standard, right? So again, like all of the .NET Standard libraries and that familiar programming model, right? That's essentially like what it's using. We're going to be able to use that to create functions whenever V2 gets released, whenever that happens.
Sure. So right, and going through my head now, knowing that we can use .NET Standard and how we've been building some .NET Standard capabilities into the other project we're working on here on stream, Core Wiki. And we did a chat with Miguel just before you, and we talked about ways to extend, and he was suggesting sending notifications out to different things. I could definitely see sending notification from, right, doing the extensibility, send a request out to an Azure function that does things like cognitive services, right? And we were saying he particularly had a thing around censoring some text, right, if people use profanity. Right, let the Azure function, because we can reference cognitive services, let that handle it, put all that logic out there, and then our application is just making a request to the function to say, oh, go process this.
Sure. So really quickly, I guess, before we end, so let's talk about some of those use cases, right? Like,
sure.
I can create these functions, they can run in the cloud, and I have, cloud scale power of compute. Like, what are some of the things we do with these? And so to kind of piggyback off of your point a little bit, let's say you do have an app and it's running on premise and you're not in the cloud yet. A very common thing that a lot of folks do is like you can write a single function or a few functions inside of a function app, And again, remember, I'm not setting up a server or anything like that. Like, but I just need to create some compute power. I just need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And a very common practice is, hey, I'm just going to create a function that I could use to extend my application, right? I can add some additional functionality by giving it like a cloud backend, right, with Azure Functions. And I
Yeah.
could do it very simply and really quickly. So kind of like, you
Mm.
just made the comment of using cognitive services,
Yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah.
might want to use the content moderator to do moderation of core wiki. Maybe somebody's uploading pictures that you don't want, they're
Oh,
not
hey.
too nice to see, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like you can have a function backend that calls those APIs, does that work for you, right? And then, obviously it's going to scale just like, Azure's going to scale with you. And
Sure.
now your function, your core application could leverage. It can make an HTTP request. We could drop something in the queue, trigger that workload to fire off, and then, consume that response when it's done. So that's actually pretty common.
Oh, very
Um,
cool.
even the option of, even the example of what we created just now, right? Like, so there was a function that, had a trigger, and then there was a function that essentially represented a web resource of some sort, right?
Right. Right.
A lot of folks create what are called keep alives, right? Like I want to keep my cache warm. I want to keep my app pool, up and running, or whatever the case is. So
Ah.
I'll have a function, and maybe it's not going to run every 10 seconds, but maybe I have it run like, every 6 or 7 hours or every couple of days, and I'm just going to send a ping, right? Like I'm just hitting my server to make sure like my stuff is still up and it's still warm, right? It's still hot. Right?
Yeah,
So again,
yeah.
that's a very common, use of, using that compute power to do like some of these, repetitive tasks, right, that we might want to take care of.
Very cool. All right. We definitely have to have you back and talk further on this because there's a lot more to dig into this. I know we wanted to talk about durable functions, and yeah, gosh, that hour
That
flew
hour went
by.
really quickly. We're gonna have to come back and do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many architecture concepts that we could get into around chaining these together, trigger, right, functions that trigger other functions, and how to really build something that does true business processing, rich business processing out
Yep.
there using Azure Functions. Very cool stuff.
So, so I guess one last thing before I go, and I'm not
Absolutely.
trying to, run this off too long, but I do have a link that I want to share with everybody. I guess I could just paste it inside of the Twitch stream.
Yes, you can paste it over
Um,
there, and if you send it to me after, I'll make sure I attach it to the YouTube recording. And for you folks watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description right below us here.
Right. So that link I just shared with everybody. So it has a lot of different resources about Azure Functions, and even some of the topics that we haven't spoken about, like how do I do versioning and testing and deployments and maintenance. And again, there's a lot of other things that we could possibly talk about. Another thing I want to call out two projects my team worked on.
Yeah.
So we have an Azure serverless book that some of us worked on and put together,
Okay.
and it covers Azure Functions. It covers durable functions.
Mm.
Um, a lot of us also worked on this thing called Azure Functions recipes, which again, it's very short and sweet snippets of code,
Okay.
and it's kind of like a cookbook, right? Like I just want to know how to do this really quickly, and you may not have time for doing lots of, I don't have time to read through an entire doc, and it might take me like 10, 15 minutes. But I just want to say, hey, how do I access environment variables? Hey,
Yeah.
how do I change the routes for my HTTP function? Like I want to do that quickly. So yeah, we have, again, we have the book and we have Azure Functions recipes that would help augment the already existing documentation we have
Mm.
to kind of allow you to, have those different options of picking up that information.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. This has been great. Um, we learned a lot. I had problems trying to do this with F sharp a few weeks ago. We'll have to come back and try and figure that out another
Sure,
time.
we can talk about that. We actually have some F# samples too in Azure Functions recipes if anybody's listening.
Awesome. Definitely need to take a look at that. Alrighty. And we'll see you next time. We'll try and schedule another follow up if we want to go through this a little bit further. Yeah,
Definitely.
folks in the chat are saying seamless stream, no problems whatsoever. This has been great.
That's awesome.
All right. I'll
All
catch
right.
you later.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate it, man.
No problem. I'll see you next time. And I'm going to go here. All right. That was great. I feel like there's so much more we could do with Azure Functions with the concept of serverless, right? And I get to focus on just my business logic, just those things that I need to do, and all that operations management of processor and memory and scalability yada yada yada. All that just falls away, and I really get to focus on those couple of things that, as a business developer, as an enterprise developer, are important to me. I love that idea, and it's something that I definitely want to spend some more time on. And we'll see if we can get Cecil back. I know there's a couple other folks on that Azure CDA team that we might be able to bring in to talk about it, so we can rotate a couple folks in and really dig into some of these topics. It's really great stuff.